Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is O'Connor and Company. We're America's morning show. You can pick us up anywhere you are, all the way around the world. In fact, Julie Gunlock has been in Ireland. She's been listening every morning. So I'm sure that's going to help our ratings. Coming up at 6:35, Kel Thomas will be here. 7:05, Brent Bozell. 7:35, Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas. 8:05, Steve Malloy of the Trump EPA. And at 8:35, Hollywood heartthrob Kirk Cameron. I'm Larry O'Connor with Angela Morabito. Good morning, Angela.
Good morning. It's great to be with you.
Seeing no further discussion, please vote.
Motion passes 5-3. Supervisors Lawson, Vega, and Weir voting nay.
That was the sound of a data center being approved in Prince William County, a highly contentious issue that we've been discussing for quite some time here. And that vote came down just an hour ago. And Jeanine Lawson, as you just heard, who opposed it with her other two Republican colleagues, joins us now. Talk about burning the midnight oil, Supervisor Lawson. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Larry.
10 hours of debate, a huge turnout from the public, overwhelming opposition voiced. And yet your Democrat colleagues decided to stay. They didn't say much at all. They just kept their heads down, kept their mouths shut, and they voted yes. And my instinct is to follow the money on this. Am I being cynical?
100%. And by the way, it's several data centers,
Yes.
7 to 9 massive buildings.
Yeah, thank you. That's right. This is the Devlin Technology Park. But by the way, there's another big one coming up here, the PW Digital Gateway Project, right?
Yep.
So what's at play here? I mean, why is this is basically a bunch of money lining the pockets of these politicians?
100%. It's all coming from the development community. In this particular case, it was Stanley Martin home builders who had 270 acres zoned for housing and saw the massive amounts of money in data centers development and applied for this rezoning to flip it to a data center complex, and has been by far one of the biggest donors to the 5 Democrats.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the unions were weighing in heavily, electrical unions in particular.
Good morning, Supervisor Lawson, or should I say good night after this all-night 9.5-hour hearing and vote? I'm not sure which is for you, and I'm a little afraid to find out. But I would love to get your take on what the impact is on residents. I think if you're outside of the Northern Virginia area, friends in D.C. and Maryland, what would it be like to actually have to live next to one of these data centers?
Well, great question, and that's why I was so, adamant that we not approve this project, because the overwhelming majority of residents, everybody that lives near it, boldly rejected it. The only people that spoke for it were like 3, and they were, like I said, the unions.
Yeah.
And these are industrial buildings, and they can be very noisy with this loud hum that drives people crazy. We have no idea how we're going to mitigate it and enforce it. The height of these buildings is 80 feet, towering over nearby communities. There are so many problems with these projects. These are not the data center that were once being rezoned and built prior to the pandemic. They're building what they now call hyperscales, and they're these massive warehouses, and I'm sure people have seen them in Western Prince William and up in Loudoun.
Yeah.
And this board continues to just rubber stamp these development projects in the West, and they're all from the supervisors in the East who, don't have to look at them and hear complaints from the residents, because none of these data centers are in the east end of the county.
Yeah, and in Loudoun, it appears and I'm sorry if I'm getting this wrong for people who are more granular and on the ground in Loudoun, but from my personal observation, when I see them when I'm driving in Loudoun County, they're almost all in that corridor near Dulles Airport, where there's already that kind of development going on in other industrial parks and things like that. This is in a very protected rural and residential area. And you mentioned the noise. These things, if power goes out, you got to have backup generators to protect all the data and protect all the servers. Listen to this question and answer, sort of non-answer, that you got I think this was around 3:30 in the morning, just to jog your memory,
Okay.
Supervisor Lawson.
We don't have that answer.
Okay. Can you give me an estimate?
I cannot.
That's a problem. We don't have any idea?
No, and all of the data center people I could text are currently sleeping. So, no.
Your simple question was how many backup diesel generators are going to be needed, and they couldn't answer. You would think they would be able to answer something like that before the vote.
Yep, and that's just one snippet of Q&A like that tonight. And the Ann Wheeler majority did not care. They are bought and paid for by these special interest groups related to data.
Well, and Ann Wheeler literally doesn't care, because didn't she just recently announce that she's done with this buddy and she's moving on? She wants to replace Abigail Spanberger in the House of Representatives?
No, that's Margaret Franklin.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry.
Margaret, yeah. Ann Wheeler is a lame duck. She
just got voted out.
Primary.
Yeah,
Well, in June. She got beat in June.
Thank you. Sorry, I got to keep all of the feckless Democrats down there in Prince William County straight. So this is a perfect example of the people opposing this, but a small number of deep-pocketed special interests having their way. Is this the last stand, Jeanine Lawson? Is there any other reprieve for the people? Because the residents are overwhelmingly opposed to this.
Right. So this particular project is in the Linton Hall corridor in Bristow, so very residential. The big granddaddy of them all is going to be heard 2 weeks from now on December 12th. That's the Prince William Digital Gateway out in the rural area near the Manassas National Battlefield. I certainly don't think that tonight's vote, this morning's vote, is a good sign of the Digital Gateway.
Yeah.
But I highly encourage people to continue to come out. And I believe both of these cases are going to end up in the courts. And their greed is absolutely turning into sloppy decisions. And maybe that's where things can get reversed in the courtroom. I don't know.
I'm so glad you mentioned the data center that's proposed out in Manassas, because when you hear the name Manassas, you know the history of that place. What impact do you think these data centers would have on the historic character of the area?
Oh, it'll be devastating. I mean, the park superintendent said it's the biggest threat to the battlefield in decades. And everybody knows that it'll be devastating to our tourism and to the view shed of everybody that comes from around the world, not just the country, to see where the first major conflict of our Civil War was. But there are board members, and there are certainly planning commissioners from the east end of the county that have this woke ideology that because it's a Manassas National Battlefield, who cares about it? Let's be done with it. They think one of them said it was, quote, a shrine to slavery. That's how demented he is about the battlefield.
We're speaking to Supervisor Jeanine Lawson, Prince William County, who's just rolling into her home after an all-night session that approved 5-3 this latest group of data centers. I got to ask you real fast, because we've had many conversations about the mood of the electorate and citizens just feeling powerless, that the government doesn't listen to them, doesn't care about them, and ignores them. And this is a perfect example. I know you said, come on out, protest, let your voices be heard, write your letters, show up at the meetings. They did that. They did that this time, and it was overwhelming. Do you worry, and do you ever have frank conversations with your colleagues saying, if we keep just thumbing our nose at the voters, it doesn't end well, and it's not about losing an election. It gets much worse than that when people feel like they're being ignored.
Yeah, no, I don't have those conversations because, frankly, they don't care what I say and what I think. They're callous. They're mean-spirited. They don't show me the deference or Supervisors Vega or Weir the deference that we deserve and our constituents deserve, because they govern with a vindictive spirit. They have made this local governing body hyper-partisan in ways that never should be. And frankly, it is the Ann Wheeler legacy, and I think that's a huge reason why she lost her June primary. Yeah. Thank God she did.
Well, and you're the new chair coming in. Is that going to make a difference? I mean, obviously it will in certain respects.
No, I got news for you. I lost to Deshandra Jefferson on November 7th.
Oh, good Lord, Jeanine. I'm so sorry. How did my brain is absolute mush. You're right. She beat you by like 2 points. I'm so sorry. So basically, Prince William is pretty much in big trouble.
No, but the good news is that she had the same positions I did on these expansions of the data center sprawl, and thankfully the residents have some hope in her.
Well, thank you. And I'm sorry, I with all the election results a couple of weeks ago, I apologize for that one not sticking in my brain.
No worries. I'm going to work on my golf swing next year.
It is always great to talk with you, and I know no one's going to keep you out of being involved in all of these issues, and you're always welcome here. Thank you, Jeanine Lawson.
Thank you. Have a great day, guys.
It is 6:16. Let's get straight to, maybe I can remember Jamie Whitten's name today in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
You got it. No worries. Hey, let's take a look at the trip on 66 and through the battlefield this morning. I have an eye on that. We're looking good.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939. Mark Levin, weekdays 6 till 9 p.m.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Well, Angela, we've got an update on a story that broke right as we were going off the air yesterday. Hunter Biden's lawyers announced that they wanted to testify before the House Oversight Committee. This is the committee that is examining all of his nefarious activities and appears to be leading toward an impeachment proceeding of his dad, the President of the United States. Biden's attorney, Abby Lowell, said that his client, Hunter, would testify at a public hearing on December 13th. That's the date that he's been subpoenaed to testify behind closed doors in private and also provide a deposition. Well, Comer said, no, that's not what we want. See, Hunter Biden and his lawyers, they want to make a public spectacle. They want to have a big TV show. James Comer said, listen, that day will come, but first you do what all the other witnesses have done. You testify behind closed doors in a private session where we can depose you and get all the information out ahead of time. You don't get to dictate what goes on here. James Comer basically did the Tom Hanks thing. Looked at him and said, "No, I'm the captain now. I'm the captain. You don't come in here and tell us what to do." So Comer and the Republicans have rejected that. Of course, Jamie Raskin, the Democrat who was basically defending Joe Biden at every turn, that's his job. He said this is a confession that they're simply not interested in the facts and have no confidence in their own case. No. It's a demonstration that they're going about this the proper, appropriate, and legal way, and they're not bowing to Hunter Biden's lawyers' antics.
Right, there's a Biden demanding special treatment, so it must be a day that ends in Y. I feel like we have had 17 different flavors of a very similar story because this is what they do. He wants the media circus because he knows the talking points. He knows to talk about his personal struggles with addiction because, yes, that's a sympathetic story. Everybody in America knows somebody whose life has been touched by the horrors of addiction. But pretty much nobody knows somebody who gave 10% to the big guy and had these huge contracts with Burisma for doing seemingly nothing.
Yeah.
He wants us to forget all that.
Well, exactly. They want to have it always. They want to display their big family and say, look, they're like the Kennedys, these people. But they deny the existence of Hunter's illegitimate child, and now they don't put any stockings up because they'd rather not acknowledge any of the grandchildren than actually acknowledge that child's existence. They like to say that he's such a great dad and pull on your heartstrings when he talks about Beau Biden, Hunter's brother, who died prematurely. But if you want to wrap yourself around your family and tell us what a great family got, okay, then your family is fair game, especially when your son made money through business, political, government interests in what appears to be illegal actions. And you're so right. It's quintessential Hunter Biden behavior, which is to act entitled and to try to change the rules so that you can be in charge of the situation. That's what addicts do, by the way. And I'm glad that Comer said no to this. And apparently, by the way, there's a suggestion that the White House is at odds with Hunter Biden's attorneys. They didn't like the fact that they did this, and they're angry at Hunter and Hunter Biden's lawyers. At least that was leaked out there. Who knows if that's just PR as well.
But if that's the case, good for the White House for actually standing up against the media circus that Hunter so clearly wants.
Yeah.
the idea that he should only ever testify in public is ridiculous. He needs to go through this process like anyone else would, not expect special treatment, and give this committee the honesty that they deserve and that the public deserves.
It is 6:22. All right, Angela, it's 6:30, and that means it's time to bring on Cal Thomas coming up in just a few minutes. But I want to alert everybody that at 8:35, Kirk Cameron is going to be here. He's bringing his first ever age-appropriate book fair to Virginia, specifically in Fredericksburg, where he'll be doing a public school book fair that doesn't include Scholastica books. And parents don't have to worry about any of these books, which is something is sort of nice for children's books, I think. So he'll be joining us at 8:35. Cal Thomas is next.
WMAL FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 6:37. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here on this Wednesday morning. Coming up a little later at 7:05, Brent Bozell, our pal at the Media Research Center. 7:35, Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas. 8:05 brings us Steve Malloy, formerly of the EPA under President Trump. And then at 8:35, Hollywood hotshot Kirk Cameron, who's coming to town with a brand new children's book situation for the good parents of Northern Virginia. I'm Larry O'Connor with my co-host today, who has a very musical name, Angela Morabito. It sounds like a conga of some kind, Angela.
Oh, I love that. I've never heard it said that way, and I'm all about it. Thank you.
Angela Morabito. You know, I've been to many swanky D.C. parties, and you know who's always leading the conga line of conservative commentators? The one and only Cal Thomas. Cal, good morning, sir. Good to talk with you.
Very good. Very good. Always good to talk to you. I hope you can hear me. I'm hearing a little interference, probably for the Russians.
No, you sound great. Thank you. So I appreciate you pushing through it.
Hey, before we go on to the subjects, I was just listening to the weather forecast, the cold weather in the D.C. area. I'm down here in Miami, but don't you find it interesting that this past summer, when temperatures in some part of the country were 100 degrees or more, the media were all over it. Another example of climate change and global warming, but when it gets down to 15 or 10 degrees, they never write anything about global cooling.
Yes.
Just a thought.
Well, no, you're right. And it's also not lost on me that world leaders are going to Dubai for a climate summit, a city that only exists because of air conditioning, which, of course, I'm told is bad for the environment. And our own mayor, Muriel Bowser, in the middle of the worst crime wave since Marion Barry, has decided to leave the freezing temperatures here to go to a nice warm climate. Good for her. Glad that she can do that, and all the spewing of carbon emissions from her airplane flying over to
Right,
Dubai.
and by the way, do you know why they don't have repeat offenders in a lot of these Arab countries? They don't have repeat offenders.
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not suggesting we should embrace those harsh penalties here in D.C., but maybe at least incarcerating somebody once in a while might do the trick.
Yeah, how about that? That used to be called just desserts, as I recalled.
Well, you know, you noticed earlier, Cal, that Biden is currently showing a lot of weakness in the black vote, which was a big part of not just him winning the general election, but certainly getting the nomination. Everyone will remember the South Carolina primary where the black vote came out for Joe Biden thanks to the urging of Barack Obama and James Clyburn. Is it possible that Clyburn, excuse me. Is it possible, Cal, that the horrific, violent crime rates that we're seeing in D.C., in Baltimore, in Detroit, in Cleveland, in New York, is that part of why Joe Biden is losing support?
I think it's part of it, Larry, but it's also a new generation of African-American people who are looking back and, it's like what Trump said in 2016, addressing a black audience. He said, look, you've been voting for these people for 40 years. What have they done for you?
Yeah.
Your schools are a mess. The crime is a mess in your major cities. Just everything's a mess. And I think it's a great question. They haven't done anything for them. And so I think younger black voters are looking at this and saying, we can do better than this. And they're even suggesting they might vote Republican. Two new polls out, one the New York Times, Siena College, and another one have shown a rapid decline in the black vote. Now, it's not huge, but it's enough that it's no longer solid and can't be counted on by the Democrats. And this, of course, has been part of their solid base for 4 to 5 decades. If they lose even, say, 10 or 15% of that vote, and all other things being equal, they're going to have a very difficult time next year.
Cal, I think you raised really excellent points about how President Biden is seemingly working very hard to lose the black vote. But as you well know, just because someone chooses not to vote for the incumbent doesn't mean they'll vote for someone new. What would your advice be to any Republican candidate if they are trying to win this group of voters over to their side?
Well, the Democrats are already running ads on primarily African-American radio stations and in African-American newspapers in certain communities. But I think I would pick up on what Trump said over 4 years ago. What have they done for you? Here's what I'll do for you if you're a Republican. I'm going to have national school choice. That's incredibly unpopular among the African-American population because if your child cannot get a decent education, they've got 2 strikes against them with a curveball hitting for their head. That's a major thing. Then we're going to really deal with crime. We're going to rearm the police. We're going to hire more police. We're going to focus on your neighborhoods because we understand you are the primary victims. You African-American voters are the primary victims of crime as well as the perpetrators. And we're going to do something about that. We're not going to have no bail anymore. If you do the crime, you're going to do the time. It's as simple as that. And I think that will resonate in the black community.
Hey, Cal Thomas, before we part ways here, I need you to listen to this real fast.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Cal Thomas. Happy birthday, Cal. I wanted to do a duet with Marilyn Monroe since I was a little kid. So
thank you. Well, it's coming up Saturday. It'll be the only time of the year when Joe Biden and I have something in common.
Oh. And we'll let everyone connect the dots on that one. Cal, it is always an absolute joy to have you on a weekly basis. Thanks for joining. Well, we have Dylan Mulvaney news, I'm sorry to say. You'll remember Dylan Mulvaney is this dude who couldn't make it in the entertainment world or in any other sphere of his public or personal life. And so he decided to act like a chick. He did a whole TikTok thing, day 3 of being a girl. He specifically says girl, not woman, girl, which is a bit of a red flag there. Well, Forbes magazine is now celebrating Dylan Mulvaney, saying that Dylan Mulvaney is one of the most successful 30 under 30 and actually put Dylan Mulvaney on the cover of Forbes magazine because Dylan Mulvaney is the kind of businesswoman we should all aspire to be. So there you go. To be a really good businesswoman, Angela Morabito, apparently you should first start by being a man.
The whole Days of Girlhood series is, look, I get what Dylan Mulvaney is trying to do, but that's a deeply personal thing that was put on display for the entire world. And I think that speaks to why Forbes put this person on the social media list and not on the activism list, not on any list about social causes. You know, and to play devil's advocate here, I gotta tell you, Larry, Dylan Mulvaney is influential. Person behind the world's most expensive can of beer caused AB InBev to lose $27 billion in market cap. So the impact is undeniable.
Definitely influential, but not in a positive way. And I got to say, I mean, if you're, I guess, listen, Forbes is doing this because let's be clear. When was the last time we talked about Forbes on the radio? Right. I mean, it's sort of a dying brand. And so they're looking for clicks. They're looking for attention. And that's why people bring Dylan Mulvaney along with their brand to get attention. But you're absolutely right in pointing out what she did, he did, they did, Dylan did with Bud Light. Because I don't know if it's necessarily good for business when your track record involves taking what was the powerhouse #1 beer brand in America after decades in that position and then knocking it off its throne, where we reached a point where stores were literally giving away Bud Light for free. There's influence there, but it's incredibly negative influence. And I would think that Forbes would, sort of contextualize what Dylan Mulvaney does for a company by focusing on the negative impact.
Totally. There is this prevailing narrative among all of these brands that Dylan Mulvaney is this hero, is this wonderful person, and regardless of what somebody thinks of the whole transgender issue, these brands just don't understand their consumers. They don't understand their business, and they keep shoveling content at us about people with whom the majority of Americans disagree. Bud Light learned that very expensive lesson the hard way. And here is Forbes, another iconic American brand, albeit one that's clearly faltering, willfully making that same error.
What's it been like for you to then shift from that creative mindset into the business side of things, with sponsored posts and promotions and things like that?
I think I'm becoming a bit of a businesswoman.
Ooh.
As much as I love the creative side, I love getting smarter. I want to know everything, and I want to know how it all works. I'm really interested, not, of course, being in front of the camera, but I love the idea of producing, and I think, why not learn it all?
Imagine all of the young women who have busted their butt to get good grades and to be part of leadership organizations in their communities and get an undergrad in finance or business, and then go on to the Wharton School of Business to try to make it in the business world, and they're not acknowledged as a leading business woman by Forbes. No, they decide to spend their attention picking the brain of businesswoman Dylan Mulvaney. It's an insult. It's disgusting. Dylan Mulvaney is a failed chorus boy who had a bit part in the national tour of Book of Mormon. And now Dylan Mulvaney is gracing the cover of Forbes magazine as a woman. Grow up.